Hey guys, so as usual, I start with foil and I create the under sculpt with foil, and then I cover the foil with medical paper tape. Using medical paper tape helps this clay to stick onto the under sculpt or the armature better, and here I'm using Original Sculpey in white for the base. This clay is really easy to form, but it does get a bit messy if you work with it for a little while. Then now I'm using my favorite, which is Super Sculpey in beige. Then this is a mix of Primo in black and blue. Originally I was going to make a witch with a pointy hat, and I wanted her to have a really skinny neck, but I changed my mind at this point and clipped off the pointy part and tried to form the hat as the Witch of the Wast's hat, which is a more flat, round top, if that makes any sense at all. So I used a few different tools here to smooth the clay down onto the hat part, but I really should have just cut the hat off altogether, worked on two separate pieces, the hat and the witch, and then attached them on later. This video is just a big look at what I did wrong. Yep, here I'm tearing off the clay again to redo her neck part because she has a lot of rolls that I didn't take into account initially. So I think that if I had started with the idea of making the Witch of the Waste, then it wouldn't have been as difficult as I made it. So now I'm going to map out her facial features, and at this point I'm saying to myself that she looks like the Quaker Oatmeal Man, and I began to panic once again. You know, the Quaker Oatmeal Man? That one? And then I tear off the bottom so that I can bulk her up again and also try on some feathers because I did not see the end of this sculpture happening. And during this process it was becoming later and later, and I think I already managed to go past the deadline for the East Coast, which I tried to do it by midnight and post something by midnight, but that doesn't always happen. So I switch over to West Coast time and I think, oh, I still have 3 hours. And at this point I was ready to give up on this sculpture. I was trying to determine whether this witch was worth the amount of materials I was using, because I kept using up so much clay and I was running out from the original box that I was working out of, and I did end up using all of the clay in that box. And I referenced the book The Art of Howl's Moving Castle. I tried to look at so many different pictures of the Witch of the Waste so that I could capture her likeness. And so that's why you see me constantly working and reworking her mouth and her nose. I'd have to say that the most challenging part about this sculpt is that I took a 2D character from an animated film and tried to bring her into this dimension. You can see how closely I'm working to the hat and how I really should have cut the hat off in the first place. Then creating her eyes would have been a lot less difficult. I honestly thought that this character was going to be easier to sculpt, but I was wrong, because she has this unique face that is within her neck, but it also sort of sticks out and is defined. And I think adding the hair in helped me to see that better. The hair was a really good landmark for me to add in at this moment, because if I had just kept sculpting her skin areas, I think I would have probably spent another hour trying to redo everything. This is how I typically do the hair on my polymer clay sculptures if there's any hair or fur. I put out some solid pieces of the hair color, and then I create tiny strips of clay and then attach them on with a needle tool, which helps to further texture the hair. I normally utilize this method for my human-like figurines that have a considerable amount of hair. When I was filming this part, I tried to avoid the shadow that was cast from the rim of the hat so that you guys would be able to see how I apply the irises, pupils, and eyelids. It was a rather awkward process because of the way I had to hold her and maneuver around my overhead lamp. Now I'm making her jewelry, which is a lot more tedious than this time-lapse shows because it's so sped up. Speaking of sped up, I think I want to record a few videos where it's more real-time. And now I get to shade with soft pastels. Not very good with the lips because they're so tiny. So this is her before I bake it, and you can see one of the reference photos from the book. This is where the Witch of the Waste is casting a spell onto Sophie in the haberdashery. Since she's still raw, I can add more soft pastels to bring out some peachiness and some life into her skin, and also add some black to the hat. And that's it. I end up baking her for about 2 hours. I think I'd like to make a video in the future about how I bake my clay pieces, and including all of the failures that I've come across that have led me to bake a bit more successfully these days. Well, that's it for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to grab your Etsy discount code in the description box below. And also, if you're on Instagram, come say hi at CreepTwee.